I'm very excited and pleased to welcome Simon Hackett, who is the Executive Chairman of Redflow Limited. Simon is a Australian homegrown success, an entrepreneur who founded Internode in the 1990s and then moved on from that one disruptive technology to another. Welcome, Simon. He'll be speaking to us for about 15 minutes, and thank you for being with us today.
That's fine. That's fine. That's working well. Yep, that's good. G'day everyone. It's great to be here today, and I really appreciate the invitation to come and have a yak for a little while. I'm here to talk about battery storage and my views of it, and I guess its place in the sun in terms of its disruptive influence upon life, the universe, and solar energy. Just to give you a little bit of a sense of where I come from, as Claire alluded to, I've got a technology background, started a broadband company, and in my own little way, I guess I've been a solar citizen for a while in the background as well. Back in 2010, so 5 and a bit years ago, I was inspired back when solar panels cost a fair bit more and when batteries cost a heck of a lot more and the electronics cost a heck of a lot more, to go and stick 10 kilowatts of panels, 20 kilowatt hours of lead acid batteries and a whole lot of electronics and monitoring gear in my house. At the time I did it, it was a $100,000 proposition. It was crazy, right? Wasn't about return on investment. That was just me liking this technology and wanting to be an early adopter of it to understand it. And so I suppose that in hindsight, I realized that for me, that was the sort of the pump priming moment to get me interested in this space and to get me interested in understanding the merits of having energy storage sitting alongside solar panels from really quite a long time ago. The other thing in the midst of this is around about 2008, I met a gentleman called Elon Musk at a conference in California. And at that point, the Tesla Roadster, the first electric car that Tesla made, was a Word document with a computer-generated picture of how good it was going to be. And again, being an early adopter, I immediately ordered one. And that was because for me, I loved EVs, I've loved EVs forever. And so Elon Musk was the first person who offered to sell me an electric car that I didn't have to make myself and that didn't suck. Right? I wasn't actually after a sports car, it's just that was what he was making. If he'd made a bread van, I would have bought that. So I'm a huge fan of Tesla, and this is important for somewhat I want to say. Really, part of the message in my mind here is about horses for courses. Huge fan of Tesla. I've been incredibly fortunate to be successful in that first business that I started, the broadband business. And it meant that I started looking for other things to invest in that might be useful ways to use technology to help to change the world, and that's led me, of course, surprise, surprise, to batteries. Back in the Tesla world, having brought the first Tesla Roadster into Australia in 2009, I wound up taking delivery. That was a left-hand drive Californian one, so I ran it alongside I ran it in the Global Green Challenge alongside the solar cars from Darwin to Adelaide in 2009, just to see if you could drive a car from Darwin to Adelaide on electrons. At that point, followed, to the enormous amusement of journalists, by a diesel generator on the back of a truck, because I needed to bring my charging infrastructure with me. They didn't get it. They didn't get what I was trying to do. I wasn't trying to prove the charging infrastructure. I was trying to understand if an electric car would just do the job. And of course it did the job, duh. But it was useful to achieve that. When the Tesla Model S's came into the country, that keenness turned into me and my wife becoming owners number 1 and 2 of the Tesla Model S. So I'm the early adopter when it comes to Teslas, right? Love them. Awesome vehicles. Here's the thing. Those batteries are fantastic in a car. They're the right thing in a car. You need the energy density. In my view, and it's biased for reasons you'll discover, but it's still, I think, accurate, it's not the ideal technology to use for battery energy storage in a home, or at least there are other alternatives that are worth considering, whichever one of those you're kind of more comfortable with. This is the year that the notion of adding battery storage to a solar system in a home, and indeed in other places in the overall grid, is just, you can feel it, it's just going mad. If I feel like I've been paddling along on a surfboard waiting for the wave, and ye gods, the wave's coming now. So what's done that? I mean, there's the flashy bit that's done that, and the Prius moment, if there's such a thing for batteries at home, is absolutely Tesla. It's the Tesla Powerwall. And it's amazing how much community awareness you can raise with an empty piece of fiberglass in a choice of colours. That's not a criticism, it's the reverse. They have lit a fire under the notion of putting this storage in your home, and I hope I didn't mean that literally. The other thing that's the real catalyst right now that's going to drive battery adoption, in my view, and it's again just a timing thing, is feed-in tariffs, and the fact that in a number of states feed-in tariffs start to roll off over the next 2 or 3 years. The very old ones last for a long time. The mid-range ones typically go away. And as you guys understand, but it's worth repeating it in your own mind, what a feed-in tariff does is actually quite distortive in terms of economics. It's brought the solar panels in, and I think it's a bloody good idea. But what it does is turns the grid, at the cost of the government, into a battery that pays you to use it. If you send power out and earn 40 or 50 cents a kilowatt hour when you send it out, if you buy it back in at 15 cents a kilowatt hour overnight, you have been paid to go through that cycle. A cycle which in fact helps the grid quite a lot because you're sending it out when it needs it, but nonetheless you're being paid to do that. When the feed-in tariff goes away, if you're someone who has it go away, that equation flips to one where you are now sending power in for almost nothing and paying to bring your own power back later on. So now you are in fact using your lovely panels to subsidise the business model of the energy retailer that you may or may not particularly like, but that's probably not going to increase your like of them. So that's the trigger point, right? What do you do about that? Well, you don't get mad, you get even. Logically, you stick a battery in your house, you keep that energy yourself, you use it yourself overnight, you self-consume, and you drop your energy use from the grid dramatically. And in the process, not only do you not care so much about sending it out, you're sending out so little, you really don't care that much about it. You've become a different sort of user and operator. You've actually made your own little power station in a really interesting and a really genuine way. So that's a really interesting thing to have go on. One of the things that you want to do here is understand how disruptive that is, but you also want to think about it in terms of what you do next. There's a really strong meme, a really strong sensibility, and I'm sure that many of you have it, that says you're going to take the fact that you're mad as hell, stick a battery in to also then unplug the grid in order to make a statement to your grid operator, which is that you're really upset about the last 20 years and you want to make them understand that. The trouble is, and this is my contention to you, that it may be either very easy to agree with or very contentious, I'm not sure which, it may vary, is actually, in my view, that's the last thing you want to do. You don't actually want to get off the grid when you stick a battery onto it. Your own economics are advantaged by being smarter than that. You can always disconnect later, but the trick is, the best economics to get going involve putting a battery in that's sized nicely for your average power consumption overnight, for your average consumption when the sun is not shining. If you do that and let the grid take on the load for the two places that battery is not enough, when you've run out of the energy overnight, and also even during the day when you don't have enough peak power to survive you coming home, the kids turning on the air conditioners, everything else going on at once, and your inverters run out of grunt, right? You can put in enough electronics and enough batteries to go completely off grid in the wilds of metropolitan Brisbane, but it's economically mad. It's the sort of thing only idiots like me should do, right? Because it's not economic. Instead of one battery, you might need 10 because you've got to survive a week full of rainy days. And even then, there might be one more rainy day. So now you're going to go out and buy a diesel generator. Now you're going to have to maintain that thing. The economics are actually not rational for doing that. It's more economically rational to treat the grid, even if you're only using it now for 5% of your total energy needs. That 5% is very expensive to get any other way. So think about it like renting a genset you didn't have to install because the grid's still out there. So that's the kind of today reason why you might want to do that, and why you might want to rethink the notion of the grid operators being an enemy here. The other thing to think about is what that does in the midterm if you do stay on the grid in the act of adding batteries to your solar system. Because once you do that, a few other things go on. It's very easy in a world where we have feed-in tariffs in it to misunderstand the motivation of the grid operators. I know because I've tried, if you threaten to add a battery to your existing solar system with a feed-in tariff, it's very hard to do that without losing the feed-in tariff. The suspicion is you're going to use the battery energy and feed that out to augment the solar panel energy and bust the rules of the feed-in tariff and lose it all. I do believe you can actually succeed in that without losing a feed-in tariff, and I'm in the process of going through that exercise in my own house in South Australia at the moment to see if I can manage to convince the SAPN that I can construct a picture they can understand that says, here's the battery and it's set up with the right stuff to never export its energy, but I want to leave the panels running. Because even though it's not sensible for me to put batteries in, I get a great feed-in tariff. I get it because I'm an early adopter, damn it. And as an early adopter, I also want to add the batteries. I want to show my friends. That's the point. So whether or not you hang on to the feed-in tariff, the thing to appreciate is the grid operators, the smart ones, or more accurately, the smart people inside each operator, because there's lots of people in big organizations, they actually want the batteries to be there because the thing they desperately need with all these solar panels out there is batteries deep in the grid to stabilize the frequency and voltage excursions that the grid suffers because of those solar panels. They want the batteries there. They want to be able, in the midterm, to pay you to let your batteries stabilise their grid. There's actually an income opportunity here. If we can just get past this interim period where all these sticks get thrown into the air, confusing stuff happens and they all fall down in some other pattern. The thing that then happens after that gets even more interesting. If you wind up with the grid operators getting the right sort of religion here, and I actually think they've got it, they just haven't explained it very well to all of us, you ultimately wind up with a really nifty thing, which is the energy grid becoming a new sort of internet, something I claim to understand because I'm used to the old sort of internet, where it's a trading base on which you can trade energy with your neighbours, where you can build a microgrid but stay connected to the macrogrid, and those microgrids can trade with each other. This opens up a really wonderful opportunity because there's a huge chunk of the population that can't stick solar panels on their roof. The orientation's wrong, they're covered in trees, or more and more, they're just sitting in an apartment building. If the grid becomes a part of the solution here, becomes a trading base, your massive solar installation can be used to generate power on behalf of the people in the apartment building down the road. You can actually start balancing that out beyond more than just your own property boundaries. So there you go, there's a very fast kind of view about where I see this stuff going, and the essential message again is that one that says, when you add the battery, and I want you to add the battery, I think the batteries are an enormous part of the future here, just bear in mind that your next reaction does not have to be to rip that grid cord out in sheer spite. You may in fact be ripping money out of your wallet. You can always do it next year if I'm wrong, just don't do it this year until you've figured out that maybe I'm right. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
go,
Simon. So, little,
thank
got
you.
a
Yep.
I Love Solar t-shirt that you can take
Yay.
home with you. That's one of the last ones we have available at the conference.
Thank you, I'll wear it with pride.
Thank you. Lots of food for thought there. I'd love to have time to have Simon for questions, but I'm sure you may bail him up a bit later on. I think there's some really good points that have been made there that are really important for us to remember, that, you know, that orderly planned transition that we talk about is not just kind of off-the-cuff political doublespeak. It's actually something that talks to some of the challenges that the policy development space is going to face as we move ahead. Now we're going to have our final speaker for Solar Supercharged. Can you believe it? After so many fantastic talks today, it is my I feel very privileged to be able to introduce Rhonda Novorowski today. Novorowski? Novorowski.
Just call me Rhonda.
Anyway, Rhonda's awesome. Rhonda has become one of the key volunteers for Solar Citizens in Queensland. She's going to tell you her story, but I'm really hoping that she gets a chance to go and have afternoon tea with Luke Howarth and our Prime Minister on Wednesday afternoon, because no one in our movement tells it like it is better than Rhonda. Over to you.
Hi, my name is Rhonda Novorowski and I live in Deception Bay, which is in the marginal seat of Peterson. I have worked in the renewable energy sector, particularly solar, for the last 16 years this year. My industry has always been a vibrant and exciting one with which you can try your hand at many things within it. I have done warehousing and logistics for 7 years, internal sales, and then in 2009, I started working with my brother Brian, a veteran of the solar industry of 25 years, for his company SunDriven, located in Geebung. I now do the administrative work, such as the creation of the STCs. STCs are the small-scale technology certificates that are part of the small-scale energy scheme. However, about 2 years ago, I started noticing a significant difference in my industry, with major solar companies folding, friends and acquaintances either closing their businesses or losing their jobs. The former state leader, Campbell Newman, decided to cut the Queensland incentives earlier than planned. My company, SunDriven, installed Campbell Newman Solar for him, and he loved it. So we were surprised, as everyone, when this happened. Then the former PM, Tony Abbott, almost put the final nails in the coffin of small renewable energy companies with the axing of the STC multiplier. However, around this time, I met the national community group, Solar Citizens, at their community information night at the former Queensland leader Campbell Newman's electorate. I was inspired to make a difference. Not to just be content to sit back and expect that others would make the decision to stand up for my industry. I then joined up to volunteer not long after this night. My first volunteer day was at the Nunda markets, asking people to sign their petition to save the renewable energy target, which was being considered to be totally cut at this stage by the then federal government. Since that time, I have done many things. I have done public speaking, such as the Save Solar Forum that Solar Citizens organised for the Australian Solar Council in Redcliffe. I spoke to a crowd of around 500 people, speaking as well at the Rally for Renewables in front of Peter Dutton's office at Strathpine, and at an information night that Solar Citizens held in New Farm. I have done market stalls in Castledine and Rockley markets, and at the Green Heart fairs in Carindale and Chermside, and a climate change summit at QUT. I have attended the Climate Change March in Brisbane and the G20 March as well. I have also dressed up as a solar warrior at North Lakes in the lead up to the Queensland state elections and handed out flyers and door knocked in both North Lakes and Caloundra, where we also did a protest on Kings Beach. In the lead up to the Queensland state elections, we had a win due to our strong campaigning prior to the elections, with the State Queensland Labor Party making a strong commitment to the renewables. And then to top that off, we then had the Federal Labor Party agreeing to do a 50% RET by 2030. Personally, I would like at least an 80% RET by 2030 to keep this country on track for future-driven economy. Buoyed on by the strong commitment of the newly elected Queensland Government, I submitted a cash flow positive program not long after this one to the Queensland Department of Housing with the assistance of my newly elected member from Marumba, Chris Whiting. Here he is, sending the Stand Up for Solar. The pilot program would have assisted low-income earners with the cost of living. However, my proposal was rejected not long after. However, both myself and Chris Whiting tried again, but disappointingly, we were again rejected. I just don't think they understood my concept. I was hugely disappointed in the rejections. I think if they had taken the time to ask me in person, maybe they would have proceeded further. However, I was incredibly grateful to Chris Whiting for trying so hard, not only on my behalf, but of those of his local constituents that ultimately would have greatly benefited from the program. I have also protested in Canberra about saving the RET on Parliament lawn and met with politicians and also met with MPs such as Reg Gully, the former Queensland member for Marumba electorate, and the new state member for Marumba electorate, Chris Whiting. I have also had a meeting with Glenn Lazarus in his office when he was with the Palmer United Party, the federal member for Petrie, Luke Howarth, and the new ALP candidate, Jackie Peterson. There. I was also, when in Canberra, one of only 2 volunteers selected to speak, to both the Green Senate members, Mark Butler, the Shadow Minister for the Environment, and also to give a speech to the Labor caucus members in their caucus room. So although a bit daunting at first, I think a worthwhile thing to do. If everyone did nothing, nothing changes, and only the heavily subsidised fossil fuel industries win. The renewable energy sector has been under constant and is still under constant attack by our out-of-touch, near-sighted governing powers of this country, who, although now seem to have talked about being an innovative one under the new federal government, however, in my experience, actions speak louder than words. Being an innovative industry, we need to see actions now if we are to be the future-driven economy all Australians will benefit from. That is a modern renewable energy economy. Australia has always been a leader in the renewable energy race. We are now lagging behind countries like India and China. To me, this is a huge disappointment. For my industry, a huge disaster. Without strong leadership, this country will become a dinosaur like the fossil fuel industry it currently props up and relies upon. I say to the leaders of this country, show us a better innovative plan for Australia's future, because the current one doesn't cut it for all renewable industries. Australia's renewable energy sector, particularly small retail, is still struggling to keep its doors open to give the end consumer their right to choose a quality installer who will give him honest advice. If small renewable retail shops close, we'll end up with a disillusioned public who doesn't have faith in my industry. And that makes me wonder how my future will be in this fantastic industry. So with the hype around the new Tesla and other similar technologies now becoming the new innovative products for the consumer, I am both excited and concerned for small retail in my industry. Will we become obsolete if these technologies are rolled out to large solar retailers who will then have a monopoly on the market? I would like to caution these technologies that they are sold only through wholesalers, as they have always been, not the large retailers, or there will not be small renewable retailers left in this country. Thus, the end consumer loses. So I'd like to ask you here today to help me in the lead up to the federal elections this year to initiate, innovate, and motivate. Initiate the conversation with neighbours, friends, and acquaintances about making the politicians listen to the people. The people say the time is now. Time for innovation in renewable energy and the policies that not only help Australia become a leading future-driven economy, but to give the solar owners installing solar to be fairly compensated, not penalised, to be putting their excess power into the grid, but to be rewarded for their investment. To make sure that people are given a voice to assist small renewable energy retailers to not only survive, but to thrive in our sunburnt country. To me, this is personal. I live in Queensland, I work in Queensland, and I'm a solar worker. And not only does my industry matter to me, I matter too, and I vote. I, for one, will be voting for the political party that helps me the most, not as all that I have said, but as a consumer with my power bills. I would like for all of you here to help me, help the solar workers and the owners of this country to achieve this by taking the time to meet with your local politicians and demand your rights as all of the above, to be treated fairly with respect, and above all, a decent feed-in tariff and the immediate implementation of the elected promise of the 1 million roofs program by the Queensland Government. If you can help me save my job and my industry, please, I beg you to do so now, before it's too late. As my friend Alicia said, visions, not regrets. Save our ret.
Thank you very much, Rhonda. We've come to almost the kind of penultimate session, penultimate activity of Solar Supercharged. I'm just reflecting still on what Rhonda said, and it really does make me think of everything that we've worked on together over the last couple of years as solar citizens, defending rollback and people's jobs, as well as our rights as solar owners. But I do see, as I said at the beginning of our 3 days together, that there's a whole lot of opportunity for us, but a whole lot of hard work to do. So just take a moment before you fill in those wonderful pieces of paper and have a chat to someone next to you about what you've learned, what you've experienced, and one highlight from the last 3 days. Have a 5-minute chinwag. I hope your conversations have been peppered with everything you're going to do in your community over the next couple of days, the next week or two, the next few months, and then right up until polling day, and then afterwards. So we'd like you to just take a quiet moment now to fill in the handy feedback forms which are in front of you. So we might have some quiet writing time. About 5 minutes or so. I should also mention that feedback forms are very helpful for us to help make these events better and also ensure that you have a really good experience next time you come to Solar Supercharged, because hell, I want to do this again. All right, so as you're finishing up your feedback forms, solar citizens, volunteers will be going around collecting those forms. And I think we're at the point of thank yous. But there were a couple of things before we get to thank yous, actually. So we've made a lot of plans and had a lot of discussions about what's next. We've looked at our phases of our election year. And remember that first part that we talked about? There were 4 phases. The first one was preparation. And the first thing that we need to do is prepare for the election. I'm just thinking, what's the best way to structure this? This is a kind of bit of live facilitation moment here. You know, I've been powering on for 3 days. But really, the first thing that we need to do is grow our numbers, and also make sure a strong early message is sent to the Prime Minister. I'm sure that a number of you have already signed the Time to Shine petition postcard that we have. People familiar with this one? Yeah, I know that many people in this room have already been out in communities asking folks to sign those petition postcards. We have many postcards that are still left to be signed, and we would like to hand this petition over to the Prime Minister in his electorate office in Wentworth in Sydney in 4 weeks' time, roughly. So we'd like you to take some of those postcards with you today, because if everyone in this room got 20 or 30 postcards signed, we'd not only have a few thousand more signatures that go straight to the Prime Minister, but we'd also have a few thousand new people to talk to in the Solar Citizens movement. So please do take postcards on your way out today. Also, I think now's a good time for any plugs or announcements. I think Jason wanted to do a bit of a shout out on something you've got coming up. Information night? Yep.
Start off a Gold Coast group. And, yeah, so we've got a couple of people here that are really keen to start off a Gold Coast group. And, yeah, so we've got a couple of people here that are really keen to start off a Gold Coast group. And, yeah, so we've got a couple of people here that are really keen to start off a Gold Coast group. And, yeah, so we've got a couple of people here that are really keen to start off a Gold Coast group. And, yeah, so we've got a couple of people here that are really keen to start off a Gold Coast group. And, yeah, so we've got a couple of people here that are really keen to start off a Gold Coast group. And, yeah, so we've got a couple of people here that are really keen to start off a Gold Coast group. And, yeah, so we've got a couple of people here that are really keen to start off a Gold Coast group. And, yeah, so we've got a couple of people here that are really keen to start off a Gold Coast group. And, yeah, so we've got a couple of people here that are really keen to start off a Go from me, and you'll probably get emails from me about an upcoming meeting that will be locked in a couple of weeks. And the Sunshine Coast, we're going to have a meeting on the 28th, and I'll also get in contact with. So anyone from Brisbane, you're going to get a call from me. I know what happens in the next couple of weeks. Going to have a rest maybe for the rest of the week, but then next week I'll be all over it. So if you want to get more involved, please do it. There's so much potential in Queensland. The solar ownership is huge. The margins are really low. Queenslanders love being swing voters. Politicians know it. We've had huge impact in the state election. So, you know, for all the Queenslanders, we've got a real good chance to make a difference. So,
Another shout out over here.
Well, not so much a shout out, but most of you know from the Queensland Productivity Commission have just finished a report on the price of electricity, and they've got another consultation out on their draft report, and they've also announced a task force for the 6% living target, where really they're wanting support from you to say yes, we want this. So we can try and put in some issues. Queensland Productivity Commission report, our website, go on there, sign on, and I'll send you registration. There's a couple of hearings, I think one of them in about 3 weeks.
50%, I think they announced it a bit later, so look around.
Good. Jack Gilding from Tasmania.
and if people want to do submissions on the feed-in tariff for the Queensland inquiry, make sure I've got your email address so I can send you all the stuff we're producing on that.
Yes, I hope you've had a chance, everyone, to exchange contact details with the friends and connections you've built over the last 3 days. I have a shout out from David Hood.
Hi, you all heard our CEO of BZE talk about Australia as a superpower the other day, on Saturday. We're still trying to pin down some politicians, but we're hoping to launch that report in Brisbane mid to end March. Just depends on the availability. I know Melissa Waters is locked in, trying to get Stephen Miles locked in, and one or two others. We hope to do it here at BUT the last half of March, so watch this space.
Any other shout outs? Now's your opportunity, a captive audience. I think there's, yep, Simon. Okay, Simon can.
I just wanted to briefly mention something. Some folks came up to me and mentioned that in all of that stuff I was saying, I didn't actually mention what on earth our battery is or does that's different. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just going to say to you that we're actually launching the Redflow battery, which is actually a cool new sort of battery that's not lithium and it's not lead acid, and it's very much better for houses, at the end of March. So you'll see a lot of hoopla on our website at the end of March about that. So that's the easy way to find out all about that stuff when we're ready to explain it.
Great. Okay. I've got 2 more. I'm going to have to park you. I'm sorry because you had to go.
I just wanted to thank you for coming to Queensland, because it's really important that we get away from the fossil fuels, and this is very good timing. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. That's for all of you. And last one here, I think.
Just a very quick one. If we're into energy efficiency, a front-end thing that do like this should be BYO.
Yep. We certainly encouraged keep cups. We did what we could. Yep. Very good point. Thank you for all your feedback that I'm sure is filling up those pages, and for being so active and engaged in the last 3 days. We are getting into thank yous territory, but after we do our thank yous, you will pick up a big handful of postcards, pop them in your bag, and then we're going to go to the stairs just outside and get a photo. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yep. We prefer them in bulk, actually. And you would too. Yeah. So yes, we're going to walk out of here, grab a big stack of postcards. We really have a lot of postcards to get out there. And then we'll go to the stairs and get that photo taken. But before Amy runs away, I would like to do some thank yous. Someone very quickly. Yeah. it's a good point to mention that you can sign the petition online, but certainly getting out into the communities with pieces of paper, we have found at this point in our nation's history is the best way to sign people up to our movement. And it also allows people to have a conversation with someone about the issues, which is like actually more important than just getting the card completed. We will be sending you an email that takes you through all of the things that you can do as first steps following this event. And as Jason, our organiser in Queensland, mentioned, that you will be getting a follow-up phone call to have a good chat about what happens next. So I would love to have more chats with you individually, and there's time to do that when we finish today, so please do come up and have a yarn. But first I'm going to do some hardcore thank yous. Firstly, I would like to thank the Queensland University of Technology for having this fantastic venue. It's been amazing to be in such a well-run, well-facilitated, cool, comfortable, fantastic space. I'd like to thank all of our sponsors, which is the university again, and when they all flick up onto the screen, I'll remember. Go Zero, Roof Juice, our event partner Get Up, our electricity sponsor Green Power, and our catering sponsors Aroma Cafe and the Fruit Box. So thanks very much to help. It couldn't have happened without that sponsorship. The volunteers who have spent 3 days and, quite a lot of time outside the 3 days helping us prepare for this event. It's been wonderful working with you all, and I hope you would like to stand up now. Where are you? All the volunteers who've helped make it happen. I can see you. Do we have any, I know we have two of our fantastic speakers here, Rhonda and Simon, but our facilitators, are there any facilitators here who would like to stand up, please? I can see one, Amanda. Who else has facilitated workshops today? Anyway, I'd like to give a big round of applause and thanks to our fantastic facilitators and to our wonderful speakers over the last 3 days. Now I'd really like to say thank you to the Solar Citizens staff. You guys are just the best team, and I'm so privileged to work with you. And I'm going to cry if I say anything else, so I'm not going to. But also particularly, particularly, I would like to recognise Nick Taylor, who's been the project manager on this event. He keeps us all whipped into extremely tight shape. I don't know how we would have pulled this off without him keeping us on track. Yep. So thank you to Alex, Amy, Reese, Jace, Dan, Emily, Nick. Have I got everyone? Oh yeah, that's me. Yep. Okay, and last but not least, oh my God, not least, you guys are fantastic. Thank you for being engaged, active delegates. We've never done anything like this before, but I'm telling you that I think we should do it again. And I hope you have a fantastic, active, solar-powered election year that we can actually get to that point of bipartisanship and get that 100% renewable energy future that we all want to see. So thank you to all of you. Okay. Great. So I'm going to hand over to you.
Okay, great.
Emily, to announce.
Hello, everybody. Sorry, just quickly, I've got some lost property if anybody's left anything behind or you've picked something up you want to give to me. And the other thing was, I thought it might be a nice idea, because I think some of you are heading to the airport this afternoon or tonight. If you wanted to carpool, maybe you could just meet at the benches outside the this plenary room after the photo, and then just arrange to share a taxi or something to help with the lifts, or if you just want to lift home, stuff like that. Yeah.
Great.
Can I still borrow that for a tea?
Yep.
There's one person we've forgotten to thank. You. Our National Director, Claire O'Rourke, who sets a cracking pace for the organisation and is the hardest working person I've ever met. Congratulations, Claire, and thank you.
Thanks, guys. All right, let's go and get a photo.